Hello and welcome to Don't Be Cinderella. My name is Rowena Kuo, and I'm going to introduce our wonderful guest today. As a change strategist, brain trainer, TEDx and international keynote speaker, Edie Raether has inspired over 3,000 professional associations and Fortune 500 companies on 5 continents. An authority on human potential, behavioral psychology, and motivation, Edie is a corporate consultant and coach and has also been a psychotherapist, family counselor, occupational therapist, college professor, and talk show host with affiliates of ABC. A best-selling author, Edie has written 7 books, including I Believe I Can Fly, an empowering character-building program for children. She is a frequent resource for all media, including the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, NBC and Reuters. Her nuts and bolts approach in her resolution and results-oriented programs promise to make change happen. Please welcome Edie Raether. Thank you for coming on the show, Edie.
It's good to be here. It's going to be fun. We're going to have fun.
Right. So tell us a little about yourself. How did you get your start?
Start with which
Your
one of
life.
the many roles? With
Of
life.
With life. How did you start out in life?
You know, it's funny that everything is kind of serendipitous for me. I stumble on things. I mean, even, the way I shop or decorate, it just kind of falls together. So I can't, even speaking, I never had a strategic plan to say, oh, I'm going to be a speaker. And 55 years ago, it was a brand new profession. I was one of the first in, as a pioneer in the National Speakers Association. And I studied with J.L. Moreno, the father of psychodrama, and people were just, not many people were trained. And so I remember being on the front page of the Wall Street Journal in Milwaukee, on the lifestyle section. And then people came to me. So it just seems like the demand was there first. So it isn't like I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. People were asking me to speak. And then I'm like, gee, I should be charging for this. And then I should be charging more. And then as a speaker, we were told you really should be an author because that gives you more credibility for speaking. So then I wrote 7 books. One is a bestseller in China. And that's a story in and of itself. Don't expect to get paid by them. And
so what motivated you to become a writer in the first place? What motivated you?
Now, you know what? That is a good question because, my first book, the one that's a bestseller, is Why Cats Don't Bark. And it's on your soul's code and calling in life and intuition as a way of hearing that inner voice to give you guidance and direction. And cats don't bark because it's not their cat calling. I remember, Rowena, when I was probably 5, was I even in kindergarten yet? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. There was a grocery store across the street and they would sell children's books, kind of with the magazines. And I would never read the books, but I would buy them. So there was this thing about books in my life. I loved books, didn't read them. To this day, I have 4,000 books downstairs. I have not read one single book. In college, I was clever to write a book report without reading them, but I love writing them, but I'm an expressive person. And so I think it was in my DNA. And then I remember a psychic or somebody saying, they saw me writing. And I will tell you, Rowena, I wanted to write at least 25 years before I broke through the writer's block. And I know that a lot of the people on your show are authors. Is that correct?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. This is kind of interesting now that I think about it. I wanted to write, but there's always distractions. I was seeing patients. I was doing speaking engagements. So when do you write? So I would try everything. I would go on a cruise. And I thought, that'll take me away from the real world. I'll be a million miles away on a ship and there'll be no distractions because back in those days, it cost like $10 a minute to call back home. And so I tried that. And there's distractions on a cruise ship. There are good distractions, right? And then I remember I would go to Mexico. I had timeshares in Mexico, and it's like, that'll do it. And so I struggled for over 25 years. And I don't know if it was writer's block. I don't think it was internal. Writer's block is more internal. It was just external distractions. So you know what finally worked for me? And then at National Speakers Association, there were people like Diana Boer. I think she's written over 50 books now. At that time, it was probably 14. And she would have her formula. And I don't know if she was the one that said it. It may have been someone else, because I was at the Maui Writers Conference, which I don't think exists anymore. It was great. And anyway, I think some of them said, get up an hour earlier every day. And then, write from 5 to 7. There's no phone calls. There's this, that. Well, I work till 1. I'm a night person. I'm not going to get up at 5. I'll feel like, a washed out dish rag. And so that wasn't going to work. And so nobody can tell you what will really work, because what did work for me, it takes me 2-3 days to get in the zone, to get in the flow where I really feel like I can write. So what works for me is that I have to do not an hour or 2 a day. I got to do all or none. I mean, almost to the point that I don't even know if I remembered to shower. I would just write around the clock, eat whatever if I remembered to, and just keep going for days. And I would just get in the zone, in the flow, and there was a momentum that worked for me. And how did I get it? People talk about time management. I also think you got to realize it's environmental, it's space management. What I did, and this finally worked, and I remember driving away with my little GMC Envoy with my 19-foot cuddy cabin boat behind me. And I went to the beach. And at that time, I had lost $4 to $5 million. I lost all my money to crooks. So, but I still had my boat. I forgot the plug. I couldn't afford the plug for the boat, but I had the boat. And I parked it in a resort parking lot by the ocean and never put it in the water. And that was where I slept at night. And then I would just go to this Villa Capriani, don't tell them. I would go there during the day and pretend like I was just one of the resort people vacationing there. And I just kept writing. And I was by the ocean. I mean, I have to be by water. I live on water now. And I put at 11 o'clock at night, I would just check calls. There was no distraction. And that worked. And then after 5 days, the resort caught on to me and they kicked me out. But in those 5 days, I got into the rhythm, the pattern, the habit. And initially, I could only do it kind of by writing. I know Bill Clinton, had a yellow pad and had to write everything up. Now, it is true that when we write, we activate centers of the brain that we don't take advantage of if we're doing it on a laptop or a computer. And it's creative centers. So writing does have its advantage. But after a while, it seemed like I could do it touching keys. And I could still get into that creative zone. So the one thing I just tell people that want to write, listen to all the people as you like, but then find your own way. What works for you? And if it's writing it out on a yellow canary pad and then having it, transferred and translated or whatever, fine. But just do it. But for me, it was getting in an environment that inspires me by the ocean and having absolutely no distractions. And this, for me, you might be fine with it, but the 1 to 2 hour a day stuff, it ain't going to work for me. Everybody's got to find their own way. Does that make sense?
So you turned a negative in your life. You say that you lost all your money, and you turned it into a positive. You used that time to write.
Yes. I think I had mentioned that to you when we were talking the other day. This is pretty crazy. I'm almost 80 and I grew up in a time, rural Wisconsin in, the 50s, back in happy days, Laverne and Shirley, and people could trust them. And especially I was an inverse paranoid. I thought people were following me around, but out to do me well, because in small towns, everybody helped everybody. And so I have grown, I always said I should have grown up in the Bronx. Then I wouldn't be so trusting. But I tend to trust everyone. I would not lie to you. And if I promise something, you're going to get it. I remember S.C. Johnson, when I spoke for them, said, she promises a lot, but delivers more. And I take so much pride in that comment. And so 2 were stockbrokers, 2 were realtors, but are they really realtors? I'm not putting down the profession, for example, of real estate. He was a felon and he got pardoned by the senator. His daddy was a senator in North Carolina. He gets pardoned. He gets out of jail a couple days before I come down from the north, and I got it. And he sold me, I think, 35 properties. Many of them were oceanfront or second row water or on the Intercoastal Waterway. So we're not talking cheap little lots in a field. And so when you're paying for 35 lots where you're getting no revenue because there weren't houses on them, you know, mistake number 2. But I didn't know what I was doing. But he said he would, I think he said he would sell one every week, or was it once a month? But it would replace the money I was making with a well-established therapy practice back in Wisconsin, because it was scary giving, you know, letting go of all that. And I wasn't married, so it isn't like there was somebody else to say, well, let me take care of the light bill. And so what happened? Rowena, I was making good money as a speaker and therapist. And I built a house in Holly Springs, North Carolina, on a little lake, but you couldn't swim or boat in it. And it just really wasn't lake living, but very lovely. And it was on Home and Garden Channel. They called it a mansion. I find that a little bit pretentious, but it's pretty nice. And I went from that to being homeless. And I mean, I bought for a couple $1,000, I got an old FEMA trailer. Now, if you know anything about FEMA trailers, they're not your real souped up campers. They're made out of tin cans, and it was all smoke filled. And I hate that. I hypnotize people to get off cigarettes. It was awful. And I only had 5 feet. I opened the door and I had a little air mattress I would flop on. I had no running water, no wired in electricity, no flushing toilets. There's no hookups. They were just sitting here on my lot. I totally homeless. But I had one thing. Actually, I had 2 things. I had my mind. I had creativity, and I had my computer. And I always, great time to write books. I had nothing else. Everything was in storage. It was crazy. So I sat by the water and put out 7 books in 7 years. And I became addicted to writing. And the negative of that was that I lost my momentum as a speaker, which was paying me very well. And all of us who have written know that it's easy to write. I don't think it's that hard to write a book once you get going, but it's the marketing, it's selling the book, it's all of the stuff that comes after. So, but here's the scoop, that it's a lesson for everybody in life, that if you're living your life on purpose, if you're true to your mission, if you're true to your calling in life, I wasn't miserable. I mean, my friends are saying, you're such an inspiration. I mean, no flushing toilets, no running water, 15 months. And I don't remember being, it was an inconvenience. I don't remember being unhappy. And so, you know, the lesson from that is, water is important to me. Music's important, friends and family. I mean, that's kind of what I had, most of what I wanted. I was 30 feet to the water. I was right on it. I could go on the dock. And I bought a Bose. It's still here. I bought it 20 years ago. I think I had to pay $20 a month. I could afford my Bose radio. So I had music, because I had electrical post outside. So I had don't tell the fire department, I had 50 million extension cords going to that one post. So I could fire up, you know, my computer, or sometimes I go to the neighbors and, you know, hook it up a little bit there. It was just crazy times. And, but yeah, I could bathe in the lake. I'm in North Carolina, not Wisconsin anymore. So I could swim 5 months of the year. And I'd show up for keynotes looking like $1 million, and nobody knew I was homeless. And then the rest of the year, I had a frying pan, and I could hit, with my extension cords, I would warm up a little water, and those Rubbermaid tubs that you store Christmas decorations in, that was my bathtub. And then when I'd go into town, one of my girlfriends would leave a key out where I did get a shower and shampoo my hair once. So, but you do what you got to do. I always have said, grow where you're planted. This is where I was planted, and I'm going to make the best of it. And I tell people I was broke, but I was never broken. That's the difference. And I was never bitter. I just learned to get better. And I think that's what we have to do, is learn the lessons. No one is your enemy. Everyone is your teacher. And if we look at it that way, and let me tell you the rest of the story. So for 15 months, see, it's a modular. Everybody thinks a modular is like, no, it's nice. It's got stone. It's a 5,000 square foot house. It's nice. But what happened was, because it was delivered and it was hanging from the crane, banks only deal with you when you have money. When you need banks, they don't want to have anything to do with you. So I go to Craigslist. So he said he was a broker. He was a mortgage broker. He lied. I got taken one more time. I gave him my last dime, and he put none of the money in the bank of my builder. So my house is hanging from a crane. I'm sitting there. So I got to figure out, because I couldn't get a construction loan because it's 85% done. I got kids that are in their 50s. They could have helped, but I couldn't. Then I could have gotten a HELOC, but it had to get done. So I had to close that gap. And it took me 15 months. And that's the other thing everybody needs to know. Everything in life is a numbers game. If you talk to enough people and you ask enough people for help, something will happen. It took 15 months. And that's the other thing I want to, I'll share that point, but then I want to remind me to talk about hope. Do you know how I finally finished the house? Yeah, just guess. I needed a few $100,000.
What did you do?
I already had the land. The land on the lake is worth more than the house. And I didn't have it. I had a mortgage. Here's what happened. I talked to enough people, and I don't remember how I got on this track. There are people, and it was somebody in Chicago. I paid him $8,000, and it came out of whatever. Anyway, what we did is we got enough business credit cards. My son's one of his best friends had a perfect credit score. I made him the CFO of my LLC. And within hours, we got a dozen business credit cards, and we got hundreds of thousands of dollars on credit cards. I've been offered $2 million for the house. I bought it on credit cards. Is this the story or what? This is crazy stuff. That if you're creative enough, where there's a will, there's a way, the universe speaks to you if you're determined enough. So listen to this. I never even paid a dime in interest, because by the time the interest was due, I got a HELOC from the bank, and so I got a few $100,000. That paid off the credit cards immediately. Is this crazy?
So you got a loan. You got a loan from the bank once you were able
HELOC,
to,
yeah. So then
HELOC.
I could pay the builder off, and everything was. And then I started putting Airbnb apartments here, and they make about $150,000 a year. So that's not extra. I mean, some people would like to make that much, and I get to live on one of the best spots of a 500-mile lake. I don't want to. It's free in a way, but I do a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So I'm switching back to speaking and my children's program, and trying to do long-term, but the Airbnb apartments really did save me. I put one in upstairs, and I'm like, heck, it's pays for half the mortgage. I put one in below me at 3 levels, and it's like, God, this pays for my whole mortgage. My son said, why don't you put another one in? And it works. It works. So where there's a will, there's a way. And I'm going to tell you, and one of my bad qualities is I'm too trusting, and I'm probably almost too optimistic, but I never had a doubt. An obstacle is something you see only when you take your eyes off the goal. Honest to God, Rowena, as bad as it was losing, I forgot to put this on here. I got to tell you guys this is funny. 3 guys on Match.com, 2 back in the Raleigh area, 1 here in the Charlotte area where I am now. I would meet guys on Match.com, not with the intention of getting money from them, but in the conversation, it would come out that, I didn't have a flushing toilet. I bought pails from the Dollar Tree and would empty them in porta potties. 3 guys loaned me thousands and thousands of dollars, meeting him in a bar 1 time. So there's other people as trusting as I am. They just use better judgment on who to trust. They've all been paid back, trust me. And but yeah, one of them was like 7,000-8,000. I don't even know his name. I wouldn't recognize him. 7-8 grand, and I don't think he even had a written statement. Is this crazy stuff?
That is wild.
This is
How did you
wild.
get these men to trust you?
I don't, you know what? I am trustworthy, and they just have better vibes of trusting that I trust too, but I trust crooks. But yes, and then there was a guy here, I met him at BB&T Bay, now it's Truist. And I remember that was about 5,000, and then another one back in Cary, North Carolina. I still stay in touch with 2 of them, because if people do well by me, I never forget them. I never forget the little people in my life. So it's really kind of interesting. But you know what? I'm 4 doors before. Hey, if anybody wants to come and do a retreat here, I can take up to about 12 people. There's 2 1-bedroom apartments upstairs, can handle 4. So if some of you authors, because I know some of them will have retreats, I'm on a 3-mile island peninsula, close to the Charlotte airport, so it's not, and there's a causeway, and every day I would walk the causeway. And I would do tapping, and I do hypnosis and neuroplasticity and brain training. So I was practicing, I was doing self-hypnosis every day. I was doing the gratitude thing. It's a combination of visualization, mental imagery. Been doing it for almost 60 years. I did that every day, visualizing myself, everything. You got to see it as though the work has already been done. And I remember my son, who's a lawyer, lawyers. And he said, Mom, you just have to admit you can't have what you want because you've lost everything. You screwed up. And I just looked at him and I said, you know what? If there's a will, and there will be, you will not be in it if you ever talk that way to me again. Because if there is 1 ounce of doubt, Rowena, 1 ounce, you're going to screw it up. It's like a cancer. In fact, it's still in my bathroom. A little plaque I probably got at the Dollar Tree, and it says, walk by faith, not by sight. And every morning when I brush my teeth, every night when I see that, walk by faith, not by sight. Because it was just, and I have guests that'll say, oh, I'd love to live on the water. And I want to say, well, do you have $10 in your bank account? You're better off than I am. So the stuff that I teach people is all mind mastery. It's how you use your mind. The question I ask people is always, what's the difference between you and Albert Einstein and you and Oprah Winfrey? And it is one thing, how you think. How you think and what you think. That is, you think Oprah had an advantage? She grew up with a dirt floor, but she, I think it was age 5, she's in my book Winning, where I interviewed different people that climbed higher, and I want to put together, how winners think, what champions do. She was 5 years old. Oprah looked at the TV screen and said, I can do that. And that's what led to writing I Believe I Can Fly, which isn't just a book. The magic is in the audio tracks that are visualization, mental imagery for little kids 3 to 9, where I wire kids for health, happiness, and success, giving them the right message at the right time, in the right way, the subconscious, for right thinking. And that is really how it all came about. It was like, what about the millions of children that come into this world and never sing their song? The kids that die with the music in them. And so I created a program for the kids to equal the playing field. So if you come from an unfortunate or disadvantaged environment with dysfunctional families, although we all have some to some degree, this will give you a fair opportunity in life. So that's kind of how it all evolved. You asked one question, you got a half-hour answer. There we go. I
Your
can't hear you.
books, your books are in many countries. How are you able to get your books into foreign languages?
You know what? I think somebody I met at the Maui Writers Conference, yes, they're in, they're in probably over a dozen languages, but maybe not as many languages as countries, because some are in Sri Lanka and India. And I know in India, Macmillan picked it up. So that would still be, it was in English. But I think I sold over a dozen foreign rights. And I have to admit, I think he was good, but then it stopped. I think things changed. The Book Expo America started changing. It got very small. 3 huge buildings, and now it's way down. But it was Bob Erdman in California, if anybody. But he connects authors with, to help get foreign rights. So I remember sending them to South Korea. I remember Mexico had inquired about winning, and I thought, well, I'll just throw Forget Selling along, and I'm paying for the postage anyhow. And then they didn't take winning, but they chose to have Forget Selling. So like I said, it's a numbers game. If they don't like one, it's maybe another. So even if they're asking for one, let them know you've been writing some others. But he is the one that did. And I had a big deal with China where it is a bestseller. That's an interesting story too. So listen to this. So I got a good, whatever it's called up front. What is it called again? Advance up front from China.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like Sri Lanka, they don't have money. I mean, maybe it was 500 or something. But you know what? I'm a Mother Teresa. If I can help the people in Sri Lanka, they got wiped away by remember the cyclone or whatever, years ago. And it was right about the time. But China had the money. They paid me a pretty good advance. And then I was supposed to get these royalties, and I never got any. So I thought, well, maybe, whatever. So listen to this. When I was having I Believe I Can Fly, the children's book for the children's program, one part of the program, the guy in China spoke English very well. And I said, oh my God, you should read Why Cats Don't Bark. It's in Chinese. And he said, oh my God, you wrote that. And he reacted like Chicken Soup for the Soul in the United States. Everybody's heard of it. And I said, no, I wrote it back 20 years ago. It wouldn't be right. No, I got it. It's right here. It's like everybody's reading it. And I said, no, they said it bombed. They never went to a second printing. Sam speaks English very well. He sends me the cover. It's a new cover. It's my name. And on the cover, it says $1 million bestseller, 280 million copies or whatever. It's just a huge amount of copies sold. So my son, the lawyer, speaks Chinese, been to China a couple times, and he's a lawyer. So I'm thinking, you know what? Am I set to, this is good. I got the right players. And, it's a different culture. It's a different way of thinking. They don't believe in paying for intellectual property. So it looks good on a resume, but don't expect, you could be dealing with a publisher. It was a big one, but just know that it's a different way of thinking. And they just said you'd have to pay $50,000 because it would be a bribe and you might get nothing. So that's another learning experience for all of your authors.
So they essentially stole your book.
Yeah, they did.
And made money off of it. And filled their own pockets.
Yep. And I had proof. I caught him in the act.
Wow.
I still remember the woman I dealt with there. Nancy Tan. Don't deal with her. And I was a little disappointed. I like Bob Erdman. He got my books in a ton of places abroad, but he didn't. I was hoping he would defend me a little bit more. And I don't think he did, because I suppose he wanted to do more business with them because he gets his cut up front. So, yeah. But they got caught. And she just denied it. And I'm sitting there, here's the cover. Oh, and I remember this. I said, you just said, these many millions copies were sold. How can you deny it? And she said, oh, we put that on there for marketing reasons. I mean, it was just one line cover up after another. So you know what? You don't get bitter, you just get better. And so if I can help those that are listening, let me know. I've been there.
So your bestseller is why about the cats, right? Why
Why
Cats
Cats-
Don't Bark.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that the book that you're talking about that made
Yeah, that was the one in China.
bestseller?
Yeah.
Well, I wonder why
yeah.
they like that one so much.
Yeah, well, I know. Cats don't bark, dogs cat. I know I don't want to go there, but you know what? It's an evergreen book. You know what we all think. If you've written several books, to those of you who have, they're like kids. They're all different. You know, one is Sex for the Soul, Winning How Winners Think. Probably the least imaginative because I just interviewed people and put together it's good. It's inspirational. I would say my bullying book, Stop Bullying Now. Somebody said that's the best book out there on bullying. To tell you the truth, I think it is. It's a complete handbook. Whether you're bullied or your kid is a bully, or you're a teacher, I've got a chapter on that, or autism, LGBT. I've got chapters on absolutely every aspect. It's a handbook on bullying. And I do in-service training programs. If some of you are teachers as well, that, you know, teachers get CEUs. It's a one-day in-service training program on bullying. Sex for the Soul, I think I get my orders from Match.com. But if any of you are, you know, Amazon, give me a break. I can't access my orders and there's no customer service or help. So there's hundreds of orders I haven't fulfilled, and I don't, at this point in my life, I don't want to deal with it. I buy from Amazon, but being a seller with them, to tell you the truth, can be challenging. There's just no customer service. So that can be tough. But, you know, and here's another thing, you know, you turn all your obstacles into opportunities. My new keynote, and I think it's going to be my best one, I love it, is unstoppable. If you can't walk, run. And it's basically turning obstacles into opportunities to bounce back big. And I share all the lessons that I'm kind of sharing with you in my story today. So, you know I've written 15 anthologies too, but they don't sell. Once you've written your own book, forget the anthologies. They want more of you. They don't care if you're with Zig Ziglar or Jack Canfield or anybody else. So that's a lesson to learn. I'm not putting them down, but once you sell your own, if they like you, they want more of you, which is really good. But I wrote a chapter in one anthology, whichever one, and it's, when opportunity knocks, do you open the door or do you complain about the noise? And so I do share briefly a little bit of what I've shared today, and then and I go from there. And yeah, it's how you perceive things. If you perceive it as noise, you're going to be annoyed. If you perceive that knock as the universe is speaking to me, God is on my side, you're going to open that door, and Lord knows what a gold mine you might find. So I that is one of my favorite chapters in all the anthologies. I thought I'd mention that.
So you're going around speaking about Unstoppable?
Yeah, that's my new keynote. And, you know, like I said, I lost my momentum. I was speaking, and, you know, as a CSP, certified speaking professional, you know, 10,000 is even low. I was only doing 5 to 10. And, and I lost my momentum. And it was like after writing, I came out of a cave and the world had changed. And it was online marketing. Before, I would just make calls, and I would just, you know, American Medical Association, the Egg Association, you plumbers, I did everybody. And it was easy. If you're good, you just had to make a call. People were like, yeah, we're planning in the fall. And they were looking. Now everybody's a speaker, whether they're very talented or not. And you know what I mean? Everybody, you go to any of these networking events. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're all speakers. Back in my day, if you were a professional speaker, you were a professional speaker. You had to be good. I mean, to get the CSP, they tracked us for 5 years, and you had to get like a 4.5 at least on every single gig you had to make. So we were tracked, and that's a professional speaker. But now today, everybody's a speaker, author, and coach. Yeah, they just, right? And I'm not taking anything away from anyone, but I'm kind of coaching somebody that I want to help. And, so now she wants to be a speaker because she hears about the fees you get. Well, it's not quite that simple. You got to wait, you got to work your way up. You better have some videos. She has no videos. And, yeah, you can, everybody, unless you've had a stroke or something, you probably can speak, or you're mute or deaf or something. But no, you got, yeah.
So are you on all the social media, TikTok? Are you?
I am not, because I shouldn't say we all have the same amount of time. I haven't taken time, but you know what I did, Rowena? And I'll let you guys know if it's good. I signed up for a program with Kim Walsh Phillips. You should wait till see what happens with me. And it's called the Client Cash Machine. And it was going to my spam mail. So that's what I want to look at tonight. I haven't looked at it. I signed up for it almost a month ago. And if that works for me, then we got to be back on this show, and I'll share it with others. But I've learned the hard way. I've recommended people. I'm doing an online course on toxic cultures. It's thinking differently together. And I'm real excited about it. It's finding common ground and dealing, with conflict resolution and bullying and EQ and empathy and all the things we lack in the workplace today. And I signed up with somebody actually in your area, in the Chicago area, and she gave me a money back guarantee, but then canceled it. She canceled my contract, so I can't exercise the money back guarantee. If we can prove intention, that's fraud. So to all of you listening, just make sure you do your due diligence up front, because if you're in the wrong boat, then, whether you have to sue or you dispute it with the credit card company, you know what I mean? It all steals energy, and it puts you in a negative vibe instead of the wonderful vibrations and energy we get when we're being creative. Remember the quote from what Mitchell was it? A writer must write, a singer must sing, a dancer must dance, and it's to thine own self be true. And it's stressful when we get distracted by crooked people, by crooks. It is. And they're out there waiting to take your money. So I'm not as careful as I should be. I'm better, but not. But I thought, she never did that before. I had her add that clause of a money back guarantee. So I thought, okay, I'll give her the money. And then, but it was 6 months after launch. And if some of you are thinking of doing an online course, Rowena, you might have resources, but I have some now that I think are good. And if some of your listeners are interested, let me see how this goes with the Client Cash Machine, because what it's supposed to do is automate a lot of your social media. Because honest God, at this point in my life, I don't want to sit there talking to people on TikTok and that. I can do videos. Obviously, I like talking. That's not a problem. So I can do videos, and I can do YouTube and do all of that. And what's good, once you do that, it can be a blog, it can be an article, it can be a chapter in your next book. So all of you as authors, look at the modality, the medium that you are most natural with and that you like. It might be writing. I would rather speak and then have somebody translate it into the written word. But what it's supposed to do, the Client Cash Machine, is automate technology in a way where I do not have to do very much. And automation seems to do, we're putting people on the moon. So it wasn't real expensive. So I am trying it. But if it works, then I would like to come back and let the world know. If it doesn't work, I would like you all to know as well, so you can learn from my mistakes and not.
I would love to hear from you about that.
Yeah.
We all need help.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is hard to keep up with all of the social media stuff. And I got to say another thing. I don't know how involved some of your listeners are, but I was just talking to a woman just before our call, and now artificial intelligence is creating a womb. So our babies are going to be birthed.
I read about that. That's just wild.
It's scary, isn't it? To me, it is scary. And my next TED talk, my first talk was brain fitness for kids, cloning the DNA of Einstein. And if some of you want to watch it, it's stuff I've done for adults for 50 years, got a standing ovation. So I think it was well received. I want you to watch it. My speaking site is edierather.com. But the children's program is at wingsforwishes.com. And it'll say TED, it'll say Brain Fitness for Kids. Watch it because it'll help you too with understanding the power of belief, the biology of belief I bring up by Bruce Lipton, the Rykoff effect, if you don't know about that, where they taught little kids to play like Mozart and they started playing like Mozart. It's basically role playing and role modeling. And I bring up, triggers that you may know from NLP, neuro linguistic programming, or if Tony Robbins made it popular. And so I bring all that in. I bring in, healing sounds and binaural beats music and all of that. So in 20 minutes, you will learn a lot. But my next TED talk is, I do have a problem with AI going too far, because I think what's happening, there's no question, human beings, because they are lacking compassion, emotion. When I moved to the Charlotte area, I don't remember hearing about that many murders. Now it's every day. And just the other day, it was two 15-year-olds. They're kids with guns they don't even know what murder is. They don't know what a lifetime in jail is, but they're committing adult crimes and they're holding them accountable now. So it's concerning, because if we have compassion, if we have empathy, we won't have bullying. We won't have murder. But when guns are that accessible, it is a scary world. And so I'm certified in something called the Change Grid. And T. Falcon Napier is one of the most brilliant people I know. And I remember him saying that human beings are becoming more like robots. And robots are developing the qualities of a human. I mean, they're even making babies. But there's one distinction, and that is empathy and compassion. And when we lose that, and we are losing it, I'm scared. I'm scared for our civilization, not just in the United States, although I think we're leading the way down the bad tube. But my next TEDx talk is going to be on the dopamine addiction of devices. And I was just interviewed, I think it was somebody out of Chicago too, the other day. And, the screen time is rewiring kids' brains, where before the age of 2 or 3, they should have absolutely 0. And then, 3 to 5, an hour, but with parental being there. So it's an interactive learning experience. No more than a couple hours a day. The average teen, I think, they said is, up to 7, 8, 9 hours. And what it's doing is short-circuiting our brains. It is deleting the ability to be compassionate or empathic. It's deleting creativity. I mean, think about it. I'm big on music. I love Beethoven. When was the last time a composer did Beethoven? And I'm not putting, if you people like rap, that's fine, but it's not that creative. It really isn't. I mean, it's the same repetitive beat, right? Put together a symphony like Beethoven, we are losing our imagination, our creativity, our ability to solve problems, which is why kids, if they're frustrated, they don't feel they have any other option than to either fight or pull out a gun and kill someone. And you're in Chicago. You hear it every day too, Rowena. You know that. And that is because our brains are literally getting rewired and fried. And so that's my next mission in life, to try to keep us on the right track.
So as a brain trainer, what are the strategies that you use?
I do a lot of hypnosis. and I'm good at it. It's a powerful tool that I happen to do very well. I've heard some practitioners, to tell you the truth, if you're left brain, don't do it. It's not a math. It's not a linear sequential thing. I'm good at it because if you're right brain and a little more dramatic and you get into the seduction smooth of it, that's when I think you're really good, because it's a seductive process. So I do that, and I do a lot, and visualization I add to it. So it isn't just giving the words mental imagery, but when we plant messages on the subconscious mind, and that's in my TED Talk, the subconscious mind is now deemed to be 1 million times more powerful. So I ask people, if you're going to dig a hole in your backyard, are you going to take a shovel or a backhoe? The backhoe will probably get it done in 15 minutes. Shovel might take you your lifetime. And so I rarely, as a coach or as a therapist, I do enough to get the information, but I rarely see anybody as a therapist or as a coach or a brain trainer
All right, let's take a little bit of a break. I mean, I think that that's just amazing what you've been doing. I'm just so fascinated by your work, and like how you work with children even, and turn them into Mozarts. And what you said was really intriguing to me about how you rewire the brain, and how children today, we don't have Beethovens and Mozarts being born that can create that kind of, or can compose that kind of music.
Yeah.
We don't see that too often these days.
We don't. And that scares me. Excuse me. My throat will get so dry and it just cuts me off. But yeah, we do have to get back into methods that, people can't even do simple math without their calculator. That's crazy, isn't it?
It is. It is.
So what I do is I also set up a lot of triggers. And that goes back to Pavlov's dog. Do you remember Pavlov's dog?
Right.
And if you're familiar with, let me get one more. With NLP,
I've heard
neuro
of it.
linguistic programming. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I tell people to gain more confidence when they sip their tea or their water. It's liquid calm. It's liquid confidence. It's whatever emotional state you want. Because we have to learn the language of the brain. And it likes simplicity. It's like a small child. You don't, little kids don't read Webster's dictionary. It's too abstract. So we have to know that our brain understands things. And look at marketing today. They talk about using simple language, using images. Kids like picture story books. So once we learn how the subconscious, and why do we have to speak to the subconscious? Very simply, because it's the powerhouse of our being. So anything that we want to do on a conscious level, Marina, look at it this way. New Year's is coming up. I'll bet you most of your people, if I ask them, they're going to have the same New Year's resolution this year that they had for the last 10 years. You know what I mean?
Yes, I could see that. Yeah,
it's losing weight, maybe not drinking as much, whatever, right? If goal setting alone worked, why would you be recycling your goals? And people do. They have the same goals. If it worked, now I'm not putting down goal setting, but the goals are the seeds of the reality that we reap. It's only the first step. So once you have your goals, if you don't add mental imagery, visualization, and you don't do it in a relaxed body mind state where you slow down your brainwave activities so that you're in a state that is receptive, and it's often called alpha state, brainwave state.
Mhm.
You slow down your brainwave activity, which is why when we do hypnosis, the first 15 minutes is just relaxation because it makes ready the territory. It opens our mind to be open and receptive like a child. So the reason I do have the children's program is because children already are in a slower brainwave. They're already in the zone. They're in the Zen. They're already there. So you don't even have to do that. But with adults, you know, over the years, we're in beta most of the time. So we have to slow down, get into that point where our minds are open. And that's why the messages that we give our children are so important, because their minds are so open. They're like sponges. And so if they've had trauma in their life, or they've been living in a home or an environment, or if a teacher or other kids say things, you know, years later, it's affecting their self-esteem and what they do. You know, first we make our habits, and then our habits make us. And so if we don't start early, and so that's the other thing I might help with. And if some of you are coaches, I work a lot with coaches to get rid of the blocks. Because so let's say you're working with somebody, whatever it is, and it just seems like they're into self-sabotage, or they're just not moving forward. And I'm not going to take away your clients. I got enough work to do. But if you send them to me for just one time, I do a Zoom call, and then we record it. They record it on their end so they can play it daily. And what I do, it's almost like a psychological exorcism where it just sucks out. It's like a psychic surgery. I take it away. And once you remove the block, you know what? You don't sometimes even have to deliberately plant the seeds. It's just like it's all been there. The potential has always been there, but it's been suppressed. So it's like a plumber. You just take out the clog and the water flows. So if some of you, and actually, if some of you are feeling even like a writer's block, if some of you are feeling that you're stuck, and you might not know what in your childhood could have done it, but you see a repeated pattern of having good intentions, but not moving forward, then you need to see me. Seriously. And I often say one and done.
One and done. You have been such a pleasure to have on the show. And I want to thank you for coming on and talking to us.
It's been my pleasure. It is. Obviously you can tell I'm a little bit passionate about it. And I do, because I know it's how we can change lives and make a difference. And it goes back to, if you're just working, if you're just, talk is cheap. If you're just using a shovel, you're not going to live long enough to get the things done in life that you want to. So it's only when you engage what I like to call the superconscious mind. Sub always feels inferior. But once you engage the superconscious mind, then the doors are open and possibilities, then you become unstoppable.
Edie Raether, thank you so much. Please send me all the links to your books and to your engagements and to your social media, and I will post them. I appreciate you coming on board, and hopefully we'll have you again soon with an update.
Sounds good. And if there's any things happening in Chicago, let me know. I can get on a plane and we'll do the keynote there.
Okay, fantastic.
Love talking to all of you. I guess I did the talking, but I felt like I was one with you. So take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye for now.
Okay, so thank you for being on Don't Be Cinderella. Create your own future. So live long and live happily ever after.